great to have you with us. It's exciting to be able to share some more stories with you. If you were here this morning listening to Sam and Donna's story, that's just one of many of the stories that are coming through the work of the grocery. It's been an incredible time. And if you've journeyed with the message for any length of time, you'll know that one of the touchstone scriptures of the message is Isaiah 43, verses 18 to 21. It says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. The wild animals will honor me, the jackals and the owls, because I provide water in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland to give drink to my people, my chosen, the people I formed for myself, that they may proclaim my praise." And we hold it ourselves as a scripture, always looking to God for the new thing, not wanting to go too far away from where God's going, looking to him and saying, what is the new thing that you're doing? What is it that you're saying? And so we hold to this ourselves, but we also hold to it for other people as we reach other people for Jesus. And we're saying, forget the former things. Forget the past, forget the regrets, forget the shame and the mistakes. But God is doing a new thing. And we've seen it time and time again where one moment with Jesus changes everything. Do you see it? Sometimes we miss what God's doing. And I never want to miss the awesomeness of what God is doing. I never want to take for granted these stories. In every story, as I sit with person after person and hear stories of transformation, I never want to lose the awe of what God's doing. The wild animals will honor me because I provide water in the desert and streams in the wasteland. Those that we didn't expect. So often those that we just don't expect to come to faith. The ones that are hurting, the scared, and the vulnerable, the rejected, and just those who seem so far away from God. They are the ones. They'll honor me because their eyes will be opened to my goodness. They'll connect with their Creator, the chosen people who he formed to proclaim his praise. We were created for connection. I'm sure we've all seen people, when they find community and are connected, they find hope, and that's what we're seeing. But more so, the hope of our Creator and connection with him. That moment of realization is what we live for. That one moment where someone connects with Jesus and life changes forever. Philippians 3 verse 12 says, "Not that I have already obtained all this, or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me." That is, to know him and to make him known. And that's what we're all about. And it's such a privilege to journey with people in this way and to see people go from death to life. This last couple of years has been some of the most incredible times of my life. The amount of stories that we have that have come out of this of God at work has just been amazing. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more shortly about the work of the community grocery and some of the stories that have come from that. But first, I'm going to invite Tim Mycock up. One of the ways we've been reaching people for many years is in our prisons work. And Tim's going to come and share some stories from the prisons, and in particular he's going to interview someone who's come out of prison that's been impacted by our work.
Thanks Danielle. Before I do that, I was just going to tell you a little bit of my story actually. The seminar's entitled God Only Stories, and I guess I could be one of them. Growing up in Manchester, up in Oldham, going to church, but not really having a faith of my own. I'd have called myself a Christian because my parents were, but in the words of one of our wonderful prison chaplains, a mouse can live in a cookie jar, but it doesn't make it a cookie. And so I was going to church, but it doesn't necessarily mean I was a Christian. But it was at a Worldwide Message Tribe event. Yes, I take great delight in reminding Tim Owen, that who's now a colleague, that he once came into my school when I was a pupil there. And it was a Worldwide Message Tribe event that I gave my life to Jesus. And I was age 17 at the time. I got involved with the message, doing a little bit of volunteering, just selling T-shirts and CDs at gigs. CDs, do you remember those? I think we might have even had the odd cassette in those days. And some of my team don't even know what a cassette is because they're not old enough for that. But we were selling some of the merch, and then I got involved in Message 2000, this big mission across Manchester. And I was a student at the time. And I got to know a young man, aged 13, with a criminal record as long as your arm. And God broke my heart for Stephen. And my whole attitude towards people who'd been convicted of a criminal offence changed. And some years later, I finished my time at uni and very clearly felt God calling me more towards youth work. I got involved in Festival Manchester the first time round in 2003. I ended up doing what was then called Accelerate. These days it's Message School of Evangelism, our gap year programme, and I joined staff in 2004 on the prisons team. So I've been around for 25 of these 30 years, and it's an absolute privilege to be a part of the message. And I always said I'd be here for no more than 5 years, but I'm still here. And, for any of our MSE students who think you're here for a short period of time, just be careful, because you might be around a little bit longer if God gets hold of you, because he's got plans for each one of us. And so it's my privilege to have worked for many years in prisons, walking the landings, prison chaplaincies, in a number of our prisons across the Northwest. And then a few years ago, stepped into a new role, kind of training, developing new outreach workers, setting up new projects around the country. And we've grown from 5 prisons then to 10 prisons now. I'm about to launch another new one in the new year. Please be praying into that. We just need a yes from the governor, but everything else is ready to go. So we're still very much in that growth mode. I'm going to invite Ivan to come and join me. And Ivan's travelled over from North Wales to be with us this afternoon. So big thank you to you and your good lady for being with us. Do grab a seat, my friend. So we first met Ivan a few years ago. Worked with Paul over at Alt Course. But I'm going to let you hear from him, really, what life was about. So, Ivan, just tell us a bit about life growing up.
Growing up, I had a bit of a difficult childhood. My father committed suicide when I was 3 years old in prison. He petrol bombed my nan's house and tried to kill the whole family. After he battered my mother and broke her arm and leg, and had a fight with my granddad. And from that traumatic event, because it was bad time for us, my mother became mentally ill with bipolar, and she used to do Ouija boards with us and stuff like that when we were kids, and make us watch videos about my father's death, which was on S4C, a Welsh channel, over and over and over again. And she told us that everybody was against us and that everybody was trying to take us away from her. Social services were involved in my dad's death, and the police and officers and all that stuff. So I grew up around violence, drug dealing with locals in the community. My father's brothers were seriously violent men. Used to batter each other, stab each other up, and they'd have black eyes every other day, and it was normal just to be seriously violent. And that life led me up to spending 18 years in prison, basically.
It's rare that I meet anyone in prison who I think you're bad or nasty or evil, but it's not uncommon for us to meet great people in prison who've had a really tough start, who've been through an awful lot of stuff that's led to them being inside. And so you finished up serving 18 years inside, part of which was at Alt Course Prison over in Liverpool.
I've served 18 years in prison.
You've served 18 years in prison in total.
But my last was 16 years, so I've done 8 years.
your last sentence was 8 years, in 8 years inside. And it was on your own in the cell that you met Jesus. Tell us how that happened.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I had to go and see my mum in that hospital, and I bolted to a bed like Sarah Connors out of Terminator and that, with the straps and all that stuff. So with all that was going on, I had so much hate in my heart for everyone, and including myself. I was using drugs, drinking alcohol to deal with all the stress and the anger and the resentment towards the world. When I got a 16-year sentence, I ended up on basic because I was fighting with officers all the time, fighting with cons and stuff like that. And while I was on that basic for 6 months, I had 6 months just to think about my life and all that. And I'd always believed in God, but I'd never believed in Jesus as a saviour or nothing. Always prayed and stuff like that. And God's always been with me if I look back now. But in the pad, I was that broken that I was crying to God from the heart. And I mean, I wanted to die. That's how broken I was. And I didn't want to live anymore. And I said to God, you know, if you're real, you need to show me something, because I can't believe otherwise. And he showed me 3 visions. And from that day, I've just been a completely different person.
Absolutely amazing stuff. And I know that God used you an awful lot in prison whilst you were inside. And, and in many ways, you were a key part of our team at Oak Course when Paul first started working there. So tell us what God did sort of in you and through you in prison. And then what life is like now, what you're up to these days.
So when I had them visions, the next day I went to the chapel. I wrote a letter to God, gave my life to Christ in the chapel, went back to the wing, told everyone what had happened and all that. I started going to Bible studies, to church and all that. That led me to getting a job in the wood shop. The whole wood shop ended up being Christians. I got a job in the drug recovery unit. I ended up running classes in there, telling them about God and what he's done for me and in my life. I ended up going on other wings doing it. I met Paul in Oak Course, started working with him with the message, and there was loads of people giving their lives to Christ every day. The wing I was on was the worst wing you could imagine. You know, people had been killed in Oak Course back then. A guy called Casper, a guy got stabbed over a bag of sugar. It was seriously violent, you know what I mean? But that wing I was on, because of the work that Paul does and I was doing with the lads, became the most improved wing in Europe. And of course had a big award and all that. And that was all to do with the Holy Spirit and God moving so powerfully in there, you know what I mean? So,
wonderful, amazing stuff, isn't it? It's almost like Jesus knows what he's doing. It's almost like God's got the answers, isn't it? And so, even what you're doing now, what does life look like these days? What difference has Jesus made in your life since being released?
Wow. So I quit school when I was younger, so didn't have no education. Did my level 1s and level 2s inside. Did my level 3 PT, level 3 sports massage, level 3 exercise referral. Did a degree in sports science. I've only passed 3 modules, but I got 9 Bs and 7 Cs. Not through my own power, I'd like to add. But I'd like to tell you a quick story. Like, I was in my pad, and I had a TMA, which is like a 3,000-word essay, and I didn't have an absolute clue how to do this TMA, yeah. So I was like, God, please help me. And as soon as I prayed, I started writing, did it in 1, yeah, 3,000 words. Guess what I got? A B. Hey. So I'm a qualified PT now. I work in a gym and all that, so I help people live fitter and healthier lives.
And Ivan is also part of a local church over there in North Wales. So he's contributing to the local community and making a real difference in the lives of other people. Having, I guess, been labelled as part of society's problem. You are not society's problem, mate. You are my brother in Christ. And actually that identity shift that happens is phenomenal. And yeah, love what God's doing in you, through you. Keep going. You've done amazing stuff in prison on the wing. Let's see that in Carnarvon, shall we? Ivan. It's always dangerous letting an evangelist speak when he says, can I add one more thing? Go on.
So I just want to add, yeah, love breaks down walls that the armies of hell have reinforced.
I'm going to take the mic back before he starts preaching, because he'd be fiery, be amazing. Thanks so much, Ivan. Daniel, I'd like to invite Daniel to come and join us. Daniel works at Forest Bank in Salford, so he's one of our local team. And Emma, who's just started working this summer in HMP Cardiff, in our Wales hub. You guys are also seeing some amazing stuff happen. So, who's going first? Ladies first. So, Emma, tell us what God's been up to down in Cardiff.
Thank you, Tim. I don't quite know how you follow that, to be honest. But yeah, so I've been in Cardiff Prison now just over 2 months as part of the team. And as all the workers would know, it takes a lot to just learn the regime and the rhythms of prison, getting to know people, getting to know staff and officers and the prisoners especially. But one of the testimonies that I have over these last 2 months is just a guy called Win, his name is, and he was on the healthcare wing when I met Win, and when I first met him, he was really anxious, really frustrated about being in prison, and I'd say he didn't really present very well in his mind. And so one of the officers had asked me to speak with him, so we talked for a while, and he just shared and we chatted. I listened, and just as it came to the end of the kind of talk, I was just shared my faith and gave him a Bible and just prayed with him and said, I'm going to come back to speak with you next week. And so the next week I went back and just again, we just talked a little bit, and I prayed for him, and I said, next week I'll come back. And if you know, or as we would know in prison, to have someone say that they'll come back and speak to you again, or to just commit something to come back is huge, because it's just that value of someone actually cares about me, or somebody actually is thinking about me. So the third week I went back and I saw him, and he was completely different. He'd had his long hair cut, he was cleanly shaven, and his whole posture and presentation was so different. And he said he'd been reading the Bible, been reading the scriptures, he'd actually been praying himself, and had invited Jesus into his life, which was so exciting. And he said to me, you know, he's been to church before in his past, he'd got a past of church, but he now had experienced Jesus for himself, that he'd actually felt that God had come into his life and actually healed him of his psychosis, is what he'd said. And also he's then started telling everyone, telling the other prisoners, telling the officers about Jesus, which was just amazing. And the one day I just walked past, and I was walking outside the healthcare, and it was all gated, and he came up to the gate and said, Emma, I've got someone I need you to talk with. His name's Mike, and I need you to talk with him. You helped me get out of my darkness, and I need you to help him get out of his. So, you know, we had a great conversation with Mike, and in fact, at the moment, I'm just on a weekly basis meeting with Mike as well and seeing what God's going to do in his life. But what's really exciting is that Win actually got released from prison just this week, and he dropped me a text message just showing his gratitude and his appreciation for what the message has done for him, and saying he's going to go to church on Sunday and is looking forward to catching up. So I'm excited for him. Please, as you pray, you know, just pray for Win and pray for Cardiff. That would be fantastic.
Wonderful. And it's that time of transition when the guys and girls first get out that things can often be the trickiest. So do please be praying for Win. Pray that he gets stuck into church, because church is weird, right? I don't know if you realise that, but church is a little bit weird if you've never been before. And so for many of the guys and girls coming out of prison, that step into church can be a bit of a scary thing. So we do everything we can to make it easier. We do everything we can to smooth the way. But it is still a little bit daunting. So please do be praying for him. Daniel.
I'm going to stand up because I'm fidgety at the best of times and I've had way too much coffee and I'm really struggling to sit still. So please let me do that. I work in Forest Bank. Forest Bank is a remand prison, which means you get sent into Forest Bank and then you go out to all the other prisons that you're going to get sent out to long term. So for me, I get really excited because our job as believers is to what? Go into all the nations. Do you know it? Make disciples, baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So what's a disciple? A disciple is someone who follows Jesus and disciples other people to follow Jesus. So I've basically got a missionary base. So I can start making disciples who will make disciples, who will be fully trained up to go into other prisons to make disciples. And I met these group of guys. They're a drug gang from London. And they came to faith. And I've just been training these guys up to make disciples in the prison. And they're going to go in end of December. And I'll probably cry, genuinely, because you start to love these guys like your children, like you're spending every day with them, studying the Bible, loving them, walking them through their past, their future. It's like the heart just breaks and just connects with these guys like something you've never experienced before. But these guys are so hungry for Jesus. I enjoy doing Bible study more with these than I do with my Christian friends on that out, because these guys just have, it's you, them, the Bible, and the Holy Spirit. So it's just wild. Like, there's one story from Bible study. This guy was like, one of them was like, I really feel like I know God's changed my heart because I'm super generous now. A guy came to my door and he asked me for a pair of trainers. So I just instantly gave him my trainers. Now, these trainers that he gave him were like 70 quid. But one of the other guys realized that the trainers he gave him was his worst trainers, even though 70 quid is a great pair of trainers. So the guy leans forward and he goes, mate, as a believer, I think you should have given him your best trainers, you know. And I was like, oh, shoot. But he was just like, it's almost like you've chucked God a bone and gone, that's a better sacrifice than what everyone else is doing. I'm there being like, oh, shoot. He's calling them out. This is crazy. But they're so hungry. He was just like, give God the bone with meat on it. Give him your best trainers. We've been saved loads. We can go and be generous now. But these guys are like passionate about Jesus, passionate about making disciples. I don't let them invite anybody to Bible study because I don't want to be their priest. Like, I want them to disciple people. So one time, they were late to chapel. This is the last little thing. They were late to chapel, and I was like, where are these guys? And chapel, there was about 25 people in there. They were late. 10 minutes later, there's a knock on the door, and I just see the 4 guys. They walk in with a big smile on their face. Behind them is 25 guys off their wing. They were just like, these are the guys we've been discipling. And the chapel service doubled. So it's just an amazing opportunity just to see disciples make disciples.
Thanks, Daniel. We could go on and on. The prisons team, when we have our monthly prayer days at the Message, when we get a chance to get the team up, we get all the prisons team up, and they all get a minute to share a story. And it's just the most encouraging time, because every single week, there's more and more stories. I get to hear them and write them all down in our team meetings, and it's absolutely amazing what God is doing. Thank you so much, guys. And of course, some of those people coming out of prison end up going into our enterprise work. They end up getting stuck into life in the community grocery network, and maybe serving in the warehouse or something like that. And some of them also we're increasingly seeing some crossover with our community church as well. A brilliant place where we can link people up to be supported, encouraged and discipled. Danielle's got some more stories from that side of things.
Thanks, Tim. It's incredible to see, to hear the stories coming from our prisons, and every time the prisons team get up and share, I'm just blown away by all that God's doing inside our prisons. But I want to share with you a little bit about the community grocery and what we're seeing through our community grocery. Now, if you've not heard about the grocery, we began, like a lot of people during lockdown, we began delivering meals. And initially it was school meals for kids who were on free school meals who weren't getting their free school meals. And so we almost became sponsors for families. And I had my 3 families that I would go and go to Aldi at the end of the week, and I'd fill up the Aldi belt. And Aldi, as you know, is a hard place to pack anyway, but when you're packing for 3 families with 9 kids, with the looks from the people around you, it isn't the easiest thing to do, especially because I'm someone who doesn't want to just load it all into the trolley and then pack it afterwards. I want to pack it as you go. And so I'm frantically trying to pack the bags as I go, and I'm getting the glares from the people of Wythenshawe. And from then, as lockdown began to lift a little bit, we were able to get our chefs back into the kitchen, and we began to do evening meals for families, not just for the free school meal families, but for families, other families who were struggling or who were having to isolate. And we started to distribute the evening meals. As things progressed, we realised that the need wasn't going away, and that actually long term this wasn't sustainable, and it also wasn't helpful to people just being given meals being delivered and all that sort of thing. And so Sam Hawthorne was a guy who began to dream about what it could look like to have a community grocery. And so we started, I know Andy went away on a month sabbatical, and he said, right, when I come back, you all need to be ready with this community grocery. And so we had 4 weeks to turn things around, and the shop was stripped out and it was fit as a grocery. And we launched in September 2020. How it works is that families come and they pay £5 annual membership, and that gives them access to 3 shops a week at £4 a shop, and also access to a load of free support courses. Depending on which church we're partnered with is all dependent on the courses that are running. The things that we say you've got to run is Exploring Christianity and Debt Management. Now, you'll find that at our various groceries that there's different courses that are running, because at one grocery partner might have a fitness instructor and another one might have a dance tutor. So the courses will vary massively. Where we're up to now, so we launched our first one in September 2020, and soon after that, we had no intention of launching more than the first one, but soon after that we got some funding. And that funding was, you can have this funding, it's got to be spent by the end of March, or given back. And if anyone knows the message, knows Sam Hawthorne, there's no way we're giving any money back. And so we had 6 to launch by the end of March, and we managed to do it. I think the 6th one was maybe launched on the 31st of March. And we're now at 20 groceries with over 32,000 members, all representing a family, 2 distribution centres, 17 vans out distributing food, 4,300 tonnes of food saved from going to waste, and the equivalent of 10.3 million meals given out. 1,250 volunteers and 1,300 support courses run. And we don't want to stop, because the need is still there. But what's more important than the amount of stores and the amount of shops that have been done is actually the stories that we've seen, the stories of transformation. And it's the stories that we love to hear. Now, on the back of the Sharston grocery, which was the first grocery to launch, we found ourselves in a position quite quickly, actually. We launched in September, and by the May, we started to talk about church coming back. By that time, we'd had about 200 people make decisions to become Christians at the grocery. Church was still locked down with COVID restrictions, and we began to talk to the church partner that meets on our site about them bringing church back. And we began to say to our members, church is coming soon. They're asking us, when do you open on a Sunday? When can we do church? And we were promising them church until the church that was coming back said they weren't coming back. And we were in the position where we had these 200 members. And we could point them to churches in Manchester, but the fact is they've got so used to our site that there's no way that they would make it. It was hard enough to get them to make it to our site sometimes. And so we sat down in Sam's office And we prayed and we said, what are we going to do? Like, we've got to do we ask a church to come and plant? What do we do? And we made a decision there and then to plant a church, something that Andy said we'd never do. But we talked that day about never saying never to God again, because often when we say never to God, it's the thing that he asks us to do. And so we made a decision then to launch a church. Now, most people launch churches really small. They launch churches by having a little group of 3-5 people in someone's house, and gradually over 12, 18 months, they maybe find a location and they go to the location. But it's the message. And we had lots of people. And so we don't do things small. And so in the May, we sat down and we said, right, okay, we're going to launch a church. We're going to launch on the 4th of July. We're going to launch with a band. We're going to launch with kids' work. We're going to launch with youth work. We're going to launch with small groups, and we're going to launch with a vision night. And there was all these plans in place. And we had 2 months to do it. And I didn't quite know how we were going to do it, I'll be honest. And some of the paperwork that needed doing beforehand was a bit daunting. But we did it, and we launched on the 4th of July. And again, it was one of those situations where you never know who's going to turn up. The reality is people say they want church, but are they actually going to come? And so we launched on the 4th of July, and we saw about 140 people turn up that morning. And 80% of those people were brand new Christians or not yet Christians from the local estate. And it's gone from strength to strength. Every week we're seeing about 200, 250 people every week. 80% of them are from the local estate. We've got about 750 people. That's including adults and children who receive the weekly email. Kids don't receive it, but they're on the list. And many more connected in who would say, this is our church. It's been an incredible year. You heard from Sam this morning, if you were in here, about how she went from being so low that she didn't think it was worth a heart being used on her, to putting herself back on the heart transplant and finding the hope because of Jesus. You know, the difference in Sam, I wish for some of these people we had the before and after, because the before and after is incredible when you see the light on people's faces. We've got a guy called Andrew who joined the grocery really early on. And he's a guy with a teenage daughter, single dad. His daughter's got a mum, but he looks after her in the week. And he says, I went from being a father to my daughter to being a dad. Suddenly, I was looking after her in a different way. I had a love for her that was different. Andrew came to church and got baptized and was really walking with God. And he began to pray for his gran. Now, his gran was the lady that brought him up. He wasn't really brought up by his mum. And one day, they went out on a prayer walk. And he walked past his gran's house. And they stopped outside his gran's house and they prayed for her. That night, he went to his gran's house, which is where he was living. And she had Alpha on YouTube. She didn't even know how to work YouTube, and yet she'd found Alpha on YouTube. She doesn't know how, and he doesn't know how, but it led to conversations about Jesus, and he was able to walk her through the Alpha course. She became a Christian after doing the Alpha course with Andrew, and about 6 months ago, she passed away, and I had the honour of leading her funeral. But to be able to stand there in front of Andrew's family and tell them that actually, because of that decision she made, we're not saying goodbye, but we're saying we'll see you soon. It's such an honour. Hector was a guy who is from Nicaragua. He had come over to England and was in a hotel round the corner from the grocery, and he found the grocery. And he came and he joined Alpha again. He joined Alpha, and one evening at Alpha, he gave his life to Jesus. And he was talking to me, and my ears pricked up because he said he was a bass player, and we really needed bass players at the church. And so I said to him, like, you've just become a Christian, but you play bass. Do you want to come to church, and do you want to be on the band? And he did. And he said, yeah, I'll come. And he said, but would you pray that my wife comes? Because I really want her to come to church. And within a few weeks, his wife's two sisters, and his father-in-law were all in church and had made commitments to Christ. They both work, him and his wife and his father-in-law are all employed to some degree with us at the Message Now. But his father-in-law, a few months later, came to me. It was a prayer day, and it was the end of a prayer day, and he came walking towards me with tears in his eyes. And he said, Danielle, he said, I've been searching for so long, and I came to England and I found Jesus. He said, I'm now ready to sacrifice everything to him. Would you baptize me? And we got to baptize Edgar at church. We've got so many of these stories. Teresa is a lady who really was against any conversations about Jesus when she came to the grocery. But her daughter wasn't, and her daughter made a commitment. Her daughter came to church and she got baptized, and she's still journeying with us now. And Teresa came with her daughter to the Christmas service. After being against any conversations about Jesus, I looked down from the stage at the end of the service, and she's at the Christmas tree giving her life to Jesus. And what they didn't know is that Teresa's son, Sarah's brother Alan, had been at Alpha and had given his life to Jesus. And there was 3 in the family, all disconnected, that suddenly were following Jesus. About 6 months or so ago, a guy walked into church. He walked into church from the Priory. He had two hours away from the Priory. He was allowed out. And he sat at the front of our service, tears streaming down his face, and gave his life to Jesus. That was Teresa's ex-husband, Alan, and Sarah's dad. A lot of that totally unconnected. A lot of that was stuff that only God can do. We've got 2 little boys, just watching the time. We've got 2 little boys, Tyson and Charlie. Tyson's 11 and Charlie's 12. They come on their own. They've been every week, or most weeks, they come on their own. The parents have only been on the odd occasion. And Tyson came to me one week and he said, Danielle, I really want to get baptized. Can I have a letter for my dad? And I said, Tyson, I'm not sending a letter to your dad. I'll come and see him. And so I went round, picked the wrong evening. It was a Tuesday evening, I remember it. It was pitch black. And I turned up at this house, and I suddenly thought, as I walked down the path, I thought, oh gosh, this isn't the wisest thing to do. And this guy opened the door with a scowl on his face. And he said, what do you want? And I said, I've just come to talk to you about Tyson. And he said, yeah, what? And I said, oh no, it's all good. I've come from the church. He's amazing. I love him. He's asking to get baptized. And I just wanted to get your permission. And he softened straight away and he said, you've come to ask me. And I said, of course I've come to ask you. I would never do that. I would never baptize your son without asking you. And he said, Tyson's been talking to me about baptism and he seems to know exactly what he's doing. In fact, I might come with him on Sunday. And his dad came with him to church on that Sunday. Now, his dad doesn't come every week, but his dad messages sometimes and we check in. And Tyson and Charlie have both now been baptized and go out and tell others about Jesus. We were out doing a Love Where You Live mission, and I said to Tyson, and Charlie said to me, have you got any of them leaflets? So I said, yes. So I gave them the leaflets. So I said, but don't just give them, tell them about church, tell them about what we're doing. And I watched, and they went down the street and they began to tell people about Jesus and about the church and about the difference that it's made to them. Proper evangelists. Tyson one morning went to his auntie's house and knocked on the door at 8 o'clock in the morning and said, Auntie Claire, you've got to come to church. Claire came to church that morning with her twin boys. All 3 of them have given their life to Jesus. 2 of them have been baptized. In fact, they're coming tonight to share their stories. The boys are excited about being famous, getting on the stage. But they're coming to share the story because they would say, our family has come together. There's a love that we've never had. Claire herself is a lady who's had a lot of brokenness, drug and alcohol addiction. She was left by her mum on her nan's doorstep as a baby. She knows who her mum is. She sees her mum now. But there's a lot of brokenness there. I met with 3 ladies the other night who were getting baptized on Sunday, Donna, Amanda, and Angela. They are, you might have seen Donna this morning, they are like Wythenshaw's finest. Mad Angela, apparently, is the nickname for Angela. She didn't leave her house for 10 years apart from to put a coat on with a hood up and run to the off-licence for vodka and back again. They were known around the area for being loud and causing trouble when they'd had a drink. And all three of these ladies have encountered Jesus in a way that I sobbed on Thursday evening as they began to tell me that they've had lives of prostitution, of drug addiction, and of hurt and abuse and trauma. Angela, she came to our church about 2 months or so ago, maybe 3 months ago. And she walked into church and all she kept saying was, I've not left my house for 10 years. And I went to the grocery on Friday. I managed to get out with a friend, took me to the grocery, and I've not left my house for 10 years. And she spent the whole time in church scratching at herself. And then she grabbed hold of my hand. And I was stood at the front and she's on the row behind me, so my arm's already stretched, and I thought she was going to break it, I'll be honest. She gripped my hand, and my arm, as the worship was happening, my arm went in directions I never thought it could go in, as I worshipped with her in whatever way she wanted to worship. And she came and sat next to me, and I realised that the whole time she had hold of my hand, she wasn't scratching. My anxiety was eased by holding someone's hand, but I had to get up and speak. So I said to her, Angela, I've got to get up and speak, but would you do something for me? Would you listen? Because I'm going to speak to you. And I think her mind has remembered something different, because she said to me, that day you just spoke to me. You just looked at me. And I'm like, I really didn't just look at you. I was looking at everyone. But in her mind, she sat there with her hands clasped, tears streaming down her face, and then she gave her life to Jesus at the end. Now, her life wasn't mended straight away. There was no miracle happen straight away. In fact, there's been occasions where she's sat in the cafe after church having coffee, cake, and vodka. She would disappear to the toilets, and I heard the other night that someone had said to her, you don't need the toilet again, Angela. Don't go and hide and have your drink. If you're going to have a drink, just pour it into this cup and stay with people who love you. And so she stayed in the cafe with her vodka and a Costa cake. Costco cake. Angela said to me on Thursday night, Danielle, she said, I've got 8 children. 4 are adopted, 4 don't speak to me. My mum left me when I was 1. I've been brought up by my dad who's dying. And she said, I came to this church and I was accepted just as I was, without being made to change. She said, Danielle, she said, I never thought I'd feel that love again. And she absolutely broke her heart. And she said 5 weeks ago she had an accident. She fell after drinking. She fractured 4 ribs in 13 places and punctured a lung. And on Thursday night she said, Danielle, I think my fall was a miracle, because I've been 5 weeks clean of drugs and drink. And she's getting baptised tomorrow. And she said, I'm so excited because I wanted to get baptised last month. When everyone was getting baptised, I came to you begging you. And you said to me, let's wait till next month. And she said, now I'm getting baptised and I'm going to remember it. So that's Angela. We've got story after story like that. I could go on for longer, but I won't. But we had this video made this week. I went through the church clips and just pulled out a few of the testimonies so that you can hear, not from me, but from them themselves, just what God's doing. And so just watch your screens.
Ever since then, I felt like a massive pressure and like weight has just lifted right off my shoulders, you know? Jesus is the biggest cure.
The fellowship, and because I'd lost all my family, I regained a massive big family. So thank you.
Amazing.
So I went to the youth group on Monday, and 2 of my mates, they had a bad arm, and I prayed for them, and somehow God made it get awfully better. As Henry Henry was very proud, and then I prayed for another person after, and his hand got better too. So, yeah.
I've never felt such peace that I can't even explain. My father just passed away 2 weeks ago on Friday, and I feel joy, I feel peace. I've been in church ever since. I was there a week before when he had the accident. But yeah, just don't play with God. Just give him the role in your life. Deny yourself. You know, he died for us. He sacrificed himself for us. So if you sacrifice things in your life, then big changes happen.
Quite hard to say in front of my sister, but I turned to alcohol a lot last year, and they're on drugs as well. Then within the last 2 or 3 months, I've not touched a drop of alcohol.
Isn't that amazing? That's amazing.
Like I said, I've not seen my sister for so long, apart from a funeral we had to attend, sadly. And now it's just brought us so close together. It is unreal. Me, my sister and my mother, considering I lived with my nana, like I said, but me and my mum and my sister, we see each other every day now. And we always call each other, and we're there.
Isn't that incredible? We were sat here talking before, and Claire was saying how God's brought love back into a family. Isn't that beautiful?
Christian is there was a bus at Holly Edge and Park, and I was playing at Holly Edge Park once, and then my mates told me that there was a bus at Holly Edge Park, and I came and I saw everyone, and I felt I've got to come to the church because God's gonna be next to me where I am.
I've said before, my daughter brought me along to one of the fun days, then I started volunteering, and I've just felt like I found a new family. I found somewhere where I get a lot of support, and it's everyone here at from the grocery who's introduced me to God and shown me the way. But I'm in absolute awe of everyone here who has become a Christian. I think it's an amazing thing to do, and yeah, I can't wait to join the family.
It's a strange one because I said to Sam one day, I think, like, we were sat talking in the cafe, and I just sort of said, I feel a lot clearer. My mind doesn't feel as hectic as it was. I just don't feel like there's this massive weight on my shoulders of having to control everything. So it's a very weird feeling to get used to, not having to worry about things, especially when things go wrong. And you're like, oh, all right, what will be, will be. You know, God's got me, so it's a nice feeling.
Technically, I've lived in Manchester since I was born. About around when I was 1, my dad kind of, like, he wasn't really around much, and then he just disappeared. He weren't much around. As I gradually got older, I started seeing posted about the message about how it's good and stuff. So I thought, why not go? So then one day, my cousin Tyson comes up to me and said, "Come to church, Jordan, one Sunday." I was like, all right. And then since then, that's the first day I came to church, I was like, wow, I feel something weird. I was like, is this God touching me? And I was like, no, now I am thinking, like, I should get baptised. And I just love everyone at the church. They're all nice, caring, and I wish it was on every day, to be fair.
Deep inside of us, things that I just feel so at home there. So I started coming to church. Last year, I gave my life to Jesus. And since I gave my life to Jesus, I've got a sudden calmness in the heart, and I can't explain it. I just feel totally different.
So Jesus, today we receive.
I was in a bad place, and I would describe it as hell, you know. And he leant in and pulled me out, you know. I was surrounded by good people. I could have been surrounded by idiots, you know. And when the time was needed, good people was put around me.
Some things that you haven't spoken out in a long time. Dreams that
it's helped me. My teachers understand me more. My mum understands me more, and most importantly, I'm getting a better connection with those around me. And I feel like I've just made new friends, family, and people I can trust.
I used to be really naughty, and obviously I used to hit teachers. I used to run around swearing. I used to skip lessons. Used to just get in trouble a lot until my brother Tyson started started telling me to come to church. And when I started coming to church, I felt relieved. I felt like every time I try to do something bad, God tells me that decision is wrong. I need to make a new decision.
I've been in a lot of trouble over the years, in and out of prison, police trouble, drugs.
And you actually came to church for the first time. You came just for a couple of hours out, didn't you?
Yeah, like out of the mental health unit, Altrincham.
And they let you out to come to church?
Yeah.
In fact, you said that they only released you because you were coming to church.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff, isn't it? Just love hearing those stories. Love seeing some of those faces. And just sat with Danielle there, kind of just feel my heart kind of swelling. I'm not part of the community church. I don't go on a Sunday. I go to a church up in Rochdale. But it's just awesome, isn't it? It's amazing what God is doing. It's those God-only stories. It's only God that can do this stuff. He can do it at the Message, he can do it in Message Community Church, he can do it in your church as well. It's just a case of being ready for it, being up for being used by God and creating those spaces and just getting out there and loving people. And Danielle and the team are just doing such a great job at making all of that happen. Danielle is officially our Chief Admin Officer at the Message. She's paid to manage the office, to look after all the admin functions, all the partnership and fundraising stuff, and yet actually she also helps to lead all these community groceries and pastors a church on the side. It's just absolutely phenomenal stuff. Well done, Danielle.
So we've got a little bit of time left. What we thought is we'll give the opportunity for some questions. You might not have any at all, in which case we'll finish. But if anyone does have any questions, maybe raise your hands and Tim's going to come round with a microphone. Just in case there are any questions, I've asked Louise from one of our community grocery workers to come and be up here, if that's okay. And
Emma's going to come and join us as well. So any questions you've got that you'd like to put to a grocery manager, to a prisons worker, or indeed to Daniel or myself, anything you want to ask about the church, about the grocery, about our work in prisons, stick your hand up. I should say, if you ask us a question about prison stuff that compromises security, we might not be able to answer it, okay? There's certain things we can't talk about, but we'll do our best. So anybody got any questions, stick your hand up and I'll come down with the mic. And they've given me the job of running around, because clearly I'm the best one built for that. Maybe not, hey? What's your question?
Hello, Danielle, all the way from Southampton. In the light of the current pressures that the country is facing at the moment, how are the staff coping with the additional pressures that are being placed on them?
Are you talking specifically community groceries? Yeah. I mean, obviously our member base is increasing. So we staff accordingly. We always look for more volunteers, and so we're constantly asking our church partners for more volunteers to work in the grocery. We also work with lots of our members in them becoming volunteers. So one of the really good things about the grocery is that local members from the local estates can become volunteers. We've seen people become volunteers and then stop being volunteers because they've got the confidence suddenly to go and get a job, which is amazing to see. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is around constantly looking at our structure and looking at how many staff we've got and whether we're fit for purpose, and then also going out and asking volunteers. We're also doing some work around corporate social responsibility, so we're working with local businesses who are looking to support us with their volunteer days as part of their corporate social responsibility stuff.
Any other questions? Question from our very own Sam Hawthorne.
I was trying to be undercover. So if we live near a prison or a grocery, how can people in the room get involved?
Great question, Sam. Thanks for asking that.
answer the question.
The question was, if you live near to a grocery or a prison, how could they get involved?
I can answer the first one about the grocery. So if you want to get involved in a grocery, the best thing is to contact the store, nip down to the store. If you've not seen one before, always good to go and visit the store and talk to the manager. And then there's a process, there's a volunteer forms, there's the whole process of becoming a volunteer if you'd like to get involved. But I think the first step is to go and visit and then have a chat with the manager or assistant manager.
Yeah, and on the prison front, it would be contacting the message depending on where you are located. So obviously I'm from Message Wales, so it would be contacting Message Wales and doing that. But we do look for volunteers. We love having people coming in with us to support us with team, if that be gifted people for doing Sunday services, to come in and teaching with us with a Bible study. But we're currently trying to look at the kind of recruitment process of volunteers within the Wales Hub. And we were just talking the other day on actually, to come into prison, there is no experience like it. Obviously, I've only been there a couple of months, but the first time I ever entered into the prison building, it literally, Cardiff Prison especially, is like something you've seen on a movie, and that whole, wow, this is something new. So I think personally, anybody that's got any inkling, any heart, any desire to go into prison, then yeah, contact us at the message. We would love to take you in, especially if you've got a heart for the people who just are really, as we've heard already today, just really broken. So yeah.
And some of the prisons team are here to give us a wave. So there's a couple of other members of the prisons team here. Come and chat to us, and we can discuss it more with you. Any other questions over on the far side? Try not to run, because I'll hurt myself.
Just for the prison side of it, what happens if you, not that I've got a record, if you've got a record and you do want to go and volunteer into a prison, is that possible?
I'll answer that one. Yes, it can be, but anybody going into prison does need to go through a security vetting process, which is quite lengthy. It's like a DBS on steroids, basically. If you've got a record, it needn't necessarily bar you, but it may do. Again, best thing, come and talk to me. And, I've put loads of people through the process, so I can probably make a reasonably well-educated guess around that. But if you can't actually get into prison because of your record, there's lots of stuff you can do on the out to support ex-prisoners. And also, just to say, the Ministry of Justice is doing quite a big piece of work at the moment around what they call lived experience. In other words, engaging those people who've been through it and using their voices to help influence change, recognising that I've never been where you are, whereas somebody else might have been and actually has a better insight into what's going on in your world. So it needn't necessarily be a barrier, but it could be. Any other questions?
I was just wanting to know what the 3 dreams were that Ivan had.
The three dreams that Ivan had. He's vanished. I'm not sure where he's gone, so probably can't answer that one just at the minute. But I know he's sticking around for tonight, so perhaps try and hunt him down. I'm not entirely sure. But it's not unusual for people to come to the prison chapel and say, I had a dream last night, and I think Jesus was in it. I mentioned earlier, they're hard to reach. Prison is not hard to reach. They're going nowhere. It's a captive audience, literally. But it's also a bunch of people who know their need of God. So those dreams are not uncommon in prisons. People having visions of Jesus standing at the end of their bed in their cell and this kind of stuff. And they come into chapel saying, boss, I had this dream last night. How do I become a Christian? And it makes our life so much easier. Any other questions?
I haven't really, I just wanted to see you run. Yeah. What is the size of the prison community? The size of the prison community?
The size of the prison community. Emma, what's your current...
So Cardiff is 800 people there, but my other colleague, Owain, who is in Park Prison, which is in Cardiff, about 40 minutes from Cardiff, they have 1,600 people there. But as Daniel said, Cardiff is a remand prison, so people come there maybe before they've been sentenced, and they could be there for just a couple of weeks, well, not weeks, a couple of months, up to, we've got some that have been there 3 years and they've still not been sentenced. And then from there, they'd go to others, which would be like your Park, or there's a few prisons, there's like 4 different prisons down in South Wales, and then you've got the Berwyn up in North Wales. That's that alone.
Across England and Wales, there are just under 80,000 in custody at the moment. I can't give you the exact figure, but it's around that 80,000 mark at the moment. The government has got plans to build an extra 10,000 prison places. I'm praying we don't need them. Gosh, that's a... What percentage of those 80,000 are Christians? Not a clue. I'll be totally honest with you, I'm not sure. I think within each of our prisons, there are people of all faiths and none. And lots of people come into prison and they will declare themselves one Christian denomination or another. And they might say, I'm Church of England, they might say, I'm Catholic. And what they mean is that their nan was. Or when they were a baby, they were christened in a church, but actually they've got no church experience and no relationship with Jesus. So we do find quite a lot of cultural Christians, but who don't actually have their own faith. And so, as a percentage, I couldn't tell you. There's a lot of people who are open. There are a lot of people who've had some experience. However, the younger the prisoner, the less likely that is. The younger the prisoner, the less likely it is that they've had any connection at all with church, growing up. So I couldn't give you an exact figure, I'm sorry. But there's plenty to go at, put it that way.
This is a question for Louise, really. So, what kind of courses do the groceries offer? And what's the reason behind the courses? And also, can anybody access the community grocery?
That's 3 questions there, Jill. I'll do the first one about the courses. So I think as Danielle was saying, that most of the churches, church partners and the groceries, the minimum is we're running something that explores Christianity and helps people, whether that be money courses, life skills, those kind of things. But I'm loving it. It's fascinating to see what is going on out there, because it's like you said, it depends what people are in the church and what they can offer. So it's great. Some churches are doing microwave cooking. Others are doing dance classes. Others are doing, there's all sorts of different things, coffee mornings. And they're kind of like hitting different spots. So there's exploring Christianity. There's also helping people practically. And then there's building community as well. Whether that be, the mums and tots and just loads of different things that people are putting on, and all the Christmas events, that just bringing people together, building that community. Because the grocery, I love the grocery, helping people physically feed them. But it's like a front door, really, into the church. It's like an open door, coming in, starting to build up relationships, but then moving forward, coming to access the courses and the groups where relationships are made, and through that, then into church and finding faith. So the courses, the groups, they are so key to the groceries with the partner churches, It's that journey that somebody can go on and building relationships. And then what was the last question? What was it? Can anyone access the grocery? We are here, we're a bridge between food banks and supermarkets. So anybody who would need to come to the grocery is very welcome. It's not means tested, so anybody who would benefit from coming to the grocery can come to the grocery. So in theory, yes, it's for anybody really.
We've got 2 final questions, so very briefly.
Sorry, this is for Danielle. If someone leads a church, how do they partner to get a grocery in their church or whatever?
So initially, so if a church is interested in a grocery, there's a number of things we look at. We'll always go into the bottom 10% areas of deprivation. And so we'll always look, like we do with Eden, we always look on the mapping, on the indices of deprivation to see whether it's a church area that we would partner in. We look for a church who's got the right amount of volunteers that could support a grocery, because it does take a lot of volunteers, and just make sure we get the right partner. There was a third thing, and I can't think of what it is. What was the other thing, Sam? The space, the right space. So the church provides a space for the grocery. So we have done a couple of groceries in porta cabins, but it's not something we generally will do going forwards. So the church needs to provide the space. So space within the church, enough volunteers within the church, and then also that it's in the right area of deprivation. Not just a pocket of deprivation, but we look at the population as well in that area to have the most impact.
And one final question.
So you've told us all about the great things you're doing. How can we get involved? What can we do to help you?
I guess that's possibly for Louise and Emma.
Relocate, move to MC. No. What can you do to help? You could, if you're local to a grocery, obviously, and local to where our prisons work, there's always the opportunities to volunteer. So volunteers is a great one. If you're local, you're welcome. We'd love more volunteers. We've got lots of food distribution going on. Partner with us. You've heard earlier, regular giving is the lifeblood of all that we do. So if you're not a regular giver and you want to support us today with that, we've got partner packs to give away. Please do that. If you are a regular giver and you can increase your gift, there's no amount on there stipulated. It's just if you sign up with a regular gift or an increased gift today, you get a partner pack. The financial support is really important for what we're doing.
And also, if people want to support their local grocery, is there anything they can do to help that other than volunteer, food supply, etc.?
Well, I'd say it depends what influence you've got within your community, but we're always looking for food. So we've got some businesses that will raise funds, do fundraisers, or we've got people who will go and collect food, within maybe a group that they run, they can collect food for us, because we always need food. Yeah.
Wonderful. And the last bit of that question then, Emma, what about when guys are getting out? How can churches help with that?
Yeah, fantastic. We obviously look for churches that are willing to take ex-offenders in, because it can be quite unique. You can have, what the offence is can be very varied. And so we look for churches that will just be accepting, loving, caring, supporting, creating great discipleship models. So if you are a church leader that you think we're that kind of church, then please let us know, regardless of where you are, so that we can send people. But on the other thing they can do for us, which we cannot forget, is please pray for us, for all of us on the stage and for every ministry, because we all know that prayer works. And I feel like when I walk into prison, to be covered in prayer myself, but for every single person that's in the prison, for those working there, for the violence that we've heard about that might be there, and especially for the prisoners, because we've had conversations, and when they know that people are praying for them, they're just blown away. So yes, please pray for them too.
Brilliant, thank you. And if you're a church that thinks you might be able to support, you might be able to welcome in an ex-prisoner, there's a brilliant resource called the Welcome Directory. So if you search on Google for Welcome Directory, sign your church up. That's a database that's accessible to prison chaplains across the country, and they can signpost people in the right direction. They've also got free training available to anybody that would be interested in supporting an ex-prisoner within a church context. So sign up to the Welcome Directory to help with that. Danielle.
Amazing. We're over time. Thanks so much for being with us.
You've been watching Message Live, and we hope it's been a great encouragement to you. Would you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and ring that bell for notifications? And thanks for watching.